This is a recording of a live Zoom session held by the Seed Library of Los Angeles Altadena's branch, featuring presenter Bree Wakelin on growing from kitchen scraps. This meeting was held November 7th, 2020.
Um, the goals of SLOLA is to grow acclimated seed to our specific bioregion and climate so as to cultivate crops and plants that are more resilient, hardy, and fruitful because they're naturalized to our weather here in East LA. And to have a seed be completely naturalized, that takes 7 seasons, so 7 years of growing. To build a community of gardeners and people interested in food security, habitat restoration, and wildlife, as well as a network of knowledge and wisdom that we can cultivate communal resiliency for us humans, the legacy of the seeds we're growing, and for the wildlife that we cohabitate with. How SOLO works. Our meetings are always open for all to attend and they're free, which is a really lovely offering. And then to be a member, it's a $10 one-time donation. And with that donation, it allows for you to check out 4 different types of seeds every month. And our speakers share on various topics that we find relevant to our mission and also what you guys want to learn. To check out a seed means that you have to be a member, and then the idea is that we use the terminology check out because the idea is that you would then return seeds that you have collected, and that bolsters our library, and then we can begin to hand out these seeds. We do have a small bank of seeds that we have collected from our members, but mostly right now, because we're still getting going, a lot of the seeds that you guys receive are seeds from companies like Baker Creek and some others. All of the seeds that we use and receive back are open pollinated, organic, non-GMO. And then also it's important that when you are returning your seeds, to be sure that they haven't hybridized with other varieties. Commonly, the brassica family can do this, spinach, lettuces, corn, beets. So it's just part of the learning curve of saving seeds. And let's see, I think I'll give it back to Jessica to introduce Bree.
Okay, thank you. I just also wanted to mention that we are recording the meeting. So if you don't, and we do post our meetings on, not Instagram, YouTube when they're done. So if you're uncomfortable with, being there, then just turn your cameras off, please. Excuse me. So now I'll introduce Bree. She works with the Garden School Foundation and is a master gardener, and she's going to talk to us today about starting things from kitchen scraps, from what's in our pantries and refrigerators. So I'll just hand it over to you, Bree.
Hello, everyone. Please let me know if you can't hear me, and I hope my internet stays stable. So I'm curious, and thank you for spotlighting me. We can wait till the end, but I'm just curious about, like, during this time, if it's pretty easy to get seeds from the library. I can answer it later if you want. So yes, as Jessica mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my presentation. Just give me a quick moment to do that. So as Jessica mentioned, that I am here to teach about regrowing kitchen scraps and a few other things. This is a really easy thing to do at home, and I feel like we all have these different fruits and mainly vegetables that we can grow from scraps. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. When I'm sharing, I can't see them, so there'll be time at the end too that I can go over any questions. But since I'm on this slide to start, I just want to show or have you all just pay attention to what this person has used as a kind of a vessel for growing scraps. It's like the bottom of a seed starting tray. So there's lots of different things you can do, but this is, you can get a lot in one. And you'll kind of notice too how shallow the water is. That's important. So a little bit about me. I made this, I am a master gardener. I made this little slide for the Victory Garden series, which I just taught last month virtually for the first time. So that was great. But yeah, Garden School Foundation is a nonprofit. we work within 7 Title I elementary schools right now. I've been with them for about a little over 5 years. I started as an intern and then became a garden educator. I work currently within 2 of our schools, teaching pre-K through 5th grade. We teach next generation science standards, cooking and garden classes. It's a lot of fun, even virtually. I was a little apprehensive about it, but it's been great. And I do miss the kids though, seeing them in person. So Garden School Foundation really gave me this path that I've taken. I became a master gardener because of a colleague at work. We went through the program in 2016 together. If you're curious about that program, application's probably going to open up next month in December. So really, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend the Grow LA Victory Garden series. And just other things I've done. So I work weekly at the Arboretum. I teach yoga here, and that's also because of Garden School Foundation, just a connection I had. And then I'm a master food preserver through Slow Food Los Angeles. I was really lucky to do a pretty intensive teaching certification with Ernest Miller, the late Ernest Miller, was an amazing person. And then this beautiful man, Sandra Katz, he really taught me so much about fermentation. I did a fermentation residency program, and he lives outside of Nashville, Tennessee, in this like off the grid community. It was fabulous. And then pre-COVID, I did one workshop during COVID, but I teach food preservation within the LA County Library and the LA Public Library. And then Yvonne, I know she was here last month, I believe, speaking to you all, a magical woman. She has an amazing email list, and I just kind of keep track of that. And so she posted about a job at Highland Hall Waldorf School. So that's a picture of the farm that I'm currently a manager of. Yeah, and then I do some beekeeping. And I also teach cooking classes to middle school kids at an amazing organization called A Place Called Home. So regrowing kitchen scraps is a fun and easy way to grow fresh vegetables on your windowsill or countertop using leaves and trimmings from your favorite produce. Here are some, we're just going to go over some common vegetables and herbs that can be brought back to life. I like this picture here because you can see a couple of things, like they have this rosemary. It looks like that they're reusing this like water bottle just to kind of contain it and try to root it. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then kind of like you see with the avocados, some of these use that toothpick method for regrowing celery. And then we have sweet potatoes and some beet greens. So growing rhizomes and tubers. So ginger, potatoes, turmeric, there's others, but those are just some common ones. So they have these buds, the growth buds, the eyes, they're commonly called, and you can cut them up to make multiple plants. And then you want to let them air dry so that they don't rot in the ground. So you would cut it up, let it air dry, and then you can plant loosely in the soil with the eyes facing up. I thought a couple of illustrations I have in this presentation are just like kind of botany illustrations talking about how these plants are modified stems. So I just think that's so cool that like an onion and a potato, we often think of it as a root, but they are stems. So there's another just kind of cool illustration with a kind of up close picture of the eye on a potato. So very simple to grow, super fun to grow. You can grow, I know a lot of people use just even like buckets to grow potatoes. And we've probably all had those potatoes that have started to grow. And instead of them going in the compost or the trash, you can grow more potatoes. And then this are just some general, since ginger is kind of a tropical plant, some growing tips that I found. So likes a sheltered position, kind of filtered sunlight, well-drained, rich soil, constant moisture, but you don't, in the dislike, you want to notice that, not waterlogged, so not too much. And then providing like some nutrients and mulch, which a lot of plants are going to really appreciate. And it doesn't so if you're growing ginger from from the rhizome, just avoiding hot, direct sun, avoiding strong winds, frost. You don't really have to worry about in our climate, depending on where you are, I guess. So, and doesn't like insufficient food. So I'll talk a little bit about fertilizer, not too deep, but just a little bit about options for that. And then here are some common leaves and stems that you can grow in water. So like I mentioned at the beginning, you want to make sure not to put it in, you want to make sure it's a shallow dish of water. Too much water can just cause like it to rot quicker. So you want to leave about an inch of the stem attached at the base of the plant. At least, it could be a little bit more, but at least an inch. And then placing the scrap into a shallow dish of water with the root end facing down. And it is really important when I do this, I try to change the water daily. And like I said, it's not that much water, so, but that will just make sure that you're not creating an environment for potentially bad bacteria. So celery works really well, lettuce. We probably all have seen some of these just naturally starting to grow, regrow in our refrigerators. Lemongrass is really easy to regrow. I had a friend give me, so they went and bought like lemongrass in bulk from an Asian market close by me. And they just started to regrow it. And it was in the, it was, I think, kept in the refrigerator. I don't think it was frozen there. That one, but it was, my plant's doing really well, and it can be almost invasive if you don't contain it. So I just have mine in a pot, and it's only maybe like 2 months old right now, but it can, over time, it will probably take up this whole large pot that I've put it in. I've seen some very large lemongrasses. So leeks, green onions, and also onion bulbs. Yeah, I've definitely seen like onion bulbs in my refrigerator start to grow on their own. And then just a little bit about botany. I thought this was interesting. So you see this little botanical illustration of the onion. Again, it's a modified stem. So the rhizomes are fleshy, non-green, underground stems. We have the bulb, like the onion. Then there's something called the corm, which an example is like an elephant ear. It's a condensed form of a rhizome growing in a vertical direction. Our tubers, like potatoes, runners, which I think we all probably, or at least if you do depending on where you are, like my arch nemesis is Bermuda grass, so that would be a pretty good example of a runner tuber. And then suckers, which can, if you have fruit trees, you probably have to deal with these, especially like pomegranates have such kind of very their suckers like want to grow often in a lot of them. And then stolon, I don't have an example of that in offset. So herbs that can be grown from cuttings, some are probably easier than others, of course, like mint is, can also be pretty invasive. Lemon balm in the mint family can be the same. But I talk to people that also have struggled with growing mint. I've heard mixed things. Some people say that it doesn't like to grow in containers, but I haven't had that. It definitely likes to have space for its roots to grow, but it can get invasive. So basil, other examples, basil, thyme, cilantro, oregano, sage, and parsley. And you want to try to take a healthy cutting about at least a couple inches long of the herb, placing it upright in a small cup of water and refreshing the water regularly. Some herbs are naturally easier to grow from other cuttings, and just don't get discouraged if it doesn't work the first time. It's kind of like gardening. It's like it takes practice and failure sometimes. And then I just have a little illustration, and I don't have any brand preference or recommendation, but like sometimes the rooting hormone can help if you're trying to grow new plants from cuttings. Roots that can be grown for their leafy greens. So these include turnips, beets, carrot tops, which make a really good pesto, surprisingly, parsnips, radishes, probably just to name a few. And use these veggies that still have their leaves attached. The roots will not grow, but their nutritious green leaves will. Simply leave about a half of the root intact and then place the scrap into a shallow dish of water, root side down, watering only up to the root portion of the plant. Again, if you go to the leaf or the stem area, it's just gonna start to rot the plant. And optionally, you can feed a natural fertilizer according to the manufacturer's recommendation. So I have just briefly a little bit, and again, I'm not recommending any brand at all, but I just chose this image that I found because it has here the NPK, which is important to like look for in your fertilizers, I feel like, and kind of have an understanding of what these numbers mean. So nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And on the next slide kind of talks about a little bit more. So often most fertilizers will have this number somewhere on the label. Sometimes I've seen it. It can be either prominent or not so prominent. It just depends on the brand. And then important things to consider as a gardener using fertilizers is that the value, so these numbers can vary widely. So these are quite low because this is a natural organic fertilizer coming from probably fish emulsion and seaweed. So the numbers are quite low and that's so it's organic. If you're working with inorganic fertilizer, the numbers will be like maybe up to 20 is I think the highest I've seen. And then what are you trying to achieve? So these numbers also have, in a very like broad, talking about in a very broad way, they have their different purposes, how they help the plant. So nitrogen is going to help create green, like foliate. I have such a hard time. Help create green leaves. So if you're looking to grow something like we saw a few back, like here. So like these, we're trying to grow their leafy greens, trying to find perhaps a fertilizer to use very small amount in the water, but trying to find a fertilizer that has a higher nitrogen content, which is this first number here, because that's gonna potentially promote more green leaves in the plant. But with the organic fertilizer, this is kind of a stand. It's like doesn't really have that much more than the other, so I think that would be fine too. So potassium, strong roots, phosphorus helps with root growth, and then potassium is all around like well-being of the plant. In a very like loosely put, there you can go so much deeper into NPK, but I think it's really important to start to understand and start to look for in a fertilizer. So pineapple from kitchen scraps can be pretty fun. These are a couple of images that I really liked, and I have seen like pretty large pineapple trees that were grown from scraps. So hopefully I put it here. No, I didn't do it with this one, but I'm not sure how long, I'm sorry, I didn't do the research on this particular slide, like how long you would have to wait if you were to grow a pineapple from the top, how long you would have to wait for it to be able to produce fruit. So a couple of the other ones I talked about do stipulate that, but this one I'm not sure. But it's a cute little plant. It looks, so it's kind of nice just to grow it, even if you're not trying to produce fruit super fast. Okay, but it's pretty easy. You just take the top off and then put in water, of course, change the water frequently, maybe add a little bit of fertilizer to the water, just according to the fertilizer recommendations, depending on the brand. And then pretty popular avocados. Again, maybe just grown for like their beauty, but something to do with the pits. They can be composted, but they're best if you like break them down into smaller pieces, which can be a little difficult. I definitely have seen avocado grow on its own. Maybe not in a compost bin, but I think like a squirrel or something carried a pit somewhere, and then I ended up with an avocado tree. So if you have purchased a plant or purchased and planted an avocado tree, you can generally expect, depending on the age of the tree, of course, you can generally expect your first fruit in 3 to 4 years after planting. So something to consider if you are planting from seed is that it could take 5 to 13 years for that tree to mature. So it's a long wait. And then of course you might just like not know, it's like 5 to 13 years is pretty vast time frame. So, but they're pretty little trees. So it's just something to consider if you are wanting to grow avocados from their seeds. And then I have a mango tree that I started from seed. I'll put this slide in the chat when I'm done. I have to change the sharing option. I think I didn't do that, but so you can refer back to this because I do have a video on the next slide. So mango trees that were grown in a nursery are usually grafted and should fruit within 3 to 4 years. If you are growing a mango from a seedling, it may take 5 to 8 years. So it could take some time. And since I think I'm doing pretty good on time. This is a pretty short video, so I'll just quickly show it if that's okay. It's 3 minutes. Hopefully it might have an ad.
Here is a mango husk that I let dry for a couple of days. That way it's not slimy and slippery, especially when you're trying to open it up with a paring knife, so it's safe to do so. So you want to find the side where there's an opening, and it's usually right near the stem. So where the mango was hanging from, and it's just right below it on the thicker part of the husk. So there's a thinner part here, and there's the thicker side here, and there's like an opening there. So I'm going to go ahead and pry it open with this paring knife, and please be careful when you're doing this. Make sure you have an adult helping you. I don't want to damage the seed, so I don't want to cut this way. So I'm trying to open it from this side. Almost there. You can see the mango seed right there. All right. Next thing you want to do is grab a paper towel and wet it and wring it out. So that way it's not dripping with water. So you just want it moist. And fold it in. And grab a plastic bag and label it with the date. Just place your seed inside the bag. You can place this in the warmest room in the house, since mangoes are a tropical plant. That way it can germinate, or on top of a refrigerator, so somewhere warm, and it should sprout in a few weeks. Here is our mango seed. It took exactly 2 weeks for it to sprout. Look at that root. Actually, there's two. There's one on the other side there. And there are the embryonic leaves right there on top, or cotyledons. So we're going to go ahead and plant this in this container. This is a 1 gallon container. We'll be planting it in. And I'm going to put a plastic bag over it to keep it humid and warm, because mangoes are a tropical plant or tree. So I'm going to be placing the mango seed right on top of the soil. I made a shallow indent right there, and I'm going to gently place it with the embryonic leaves facing up. And I'm going to go and bury the rest of the seed and the root right there. You don't want to expose the root to light. So just enough to cover the root. And I'll keep this exposed so that way it can sprout. So now we're going to place a clear plastic bag over the pot. So this will keep it humid in there and keep it a little warmer than the room temperature. The clear plastic bag will let some light in there. So it's like a miniature greenhouse. So stay tuned, guys, for the update. Let's cross our fingers that this will make it through the middle of winter here. Like I said, I'm going to be keeping this in our grow room where it's about 69 to 71 degrees Fahrenheit. And we'll see how we do. Stay tuned, guys. 9 weeks later, since the seed was germinated, looking great. The leaves are pretty long. They're longer than the seedling itself. And it's about only 2.5 inches tall. So we'll see how we do. Stay tuned.
So, and of course, I think with any, like if you're saving the seeds from a purchase like produce plant, just being mindful of where it came from, if it was organic and if you know the source. Okay, so let me see if I can get my.
Here is a mango husk that I left.
Okay, so I also just wanted to talk about sprouting seeds. I know it's not really kitchen scraps, but I think it's a fun and easy thing to do. So growing fresh microgreens and sprouts on your counter using dried beans and seeds. So we'll go over a lot of different varieties and methods. So this is a really simple, I bought a jar that's specifically for sprouting seeds, but you don't need that. So this is just a generic wide mouth mason jar, probably a quart, it looks like. So about 4 cups. And then that's just cheesecloth and a rubber band. So you could just do it like that. So the basics, and then this is a picture of a fancier model. I don't have that one, but some of them do go upside down because water can be your nemesis when you're sprouting seeds. So you want to start with about 1/4 cup of seeds in a sterile jar. So hot soapy water. You can boil the jars if you want to make them sterile for about 10 minutes. And then depending on the seed, you want to cover, but a general rule is cover the seeds with water and soak for 8 hours. Some grains do not need to go that long. And you want to cover the jar with cheesecloth or a coffee filter or a tea towel, and secure it with a rubber band or a canning jar. Ring top is another good method. Easier to do definitely with something like cheesecloth or a coffee filter. You probably couldn't really get it to secure with a tea towel though. And this is really important to rinse and dry your seeds well 2 to 3 times a day. So they can quickly go anaerobic otherwise, or start to grow like bad bacteria. So it's really important that you rinse and drain as best you can 2 to 3 times a day. So that's where, like you can see, this has like a mesh, like a metal mesh. Mine has like a plastic mesh that I have. It just helps make that process easier. And depending on the seed, you should have sprouts within 2 to 4 days. And then some general other basics, air circulation. So it's like I said, and you don't want to create an anaerobic environment. It's like where bad bacteria can start to grow. So airflow is essential to successfully sprout seeds. So cleaning that water, making sure that all the water is out of it will help ensure that. Cleanliness, wash your hands, use clean seeds in a sterile sprouting jar. So, and you can usually tell like when things go funky. So if it smells funky, put it in the compost. But yeah, I wouldn't try to save it if it smells funky or looks funky. Draining. It is essential to drain seeds well during the sprouting process. After harvesting your sprouts, you can pat them dry before storage in the refrigerator. And rinsing. Water is essential when sprouting seeds. Rinse and drain seeds well 2 to 3 times a day to avoid mold and bacterial growth. So storage. Seeds do best stored in a cool, dry, and dark place. Keeping seeds within a temperature range between 55 and 70. Let's say closer to that 55. To extend shelf life even further, consider freezing your seeds. Limit humidity and condensation as much as possible, since moisture reduces a seed's shelf life. And then soaking your seeds in water brings them out of dormancy. And with storage, proper storage properly stored sprouts will generally keep for 6 weeks in the fridge. It does depend though on the like I said, I said in the previous slide, like making sure they're dry is going to make sure that bacterial growth doesn't occur, or bad bacterial growth, and fresher is always better, as is the case with a lot of things. So some different seeds: beans, lentils, and peas. Grown alone or as blends, lentils and peas produce beautiful and nutritious sprouts and make for a lovely addition to salads, sandwiches, or simply enjoy on their own. And those are some different varieties: azuki, I believe, garbanzo, lentils. These are mung beans in the picture. Peas, pinto beans, soybeans. And probably like, because we see, it just depends on probably where you're getting your seeds. If you're buying like a very cheap pinto bean, for example, or any of these, your germination rate might not be very high. Just like with seeds that you would grow, like the fresher and the younger the seed, the more viable you're going to get with germination. So some leafy sprouts, I think I have 2 pages on this. Grown alone or again as a blend for their leafy sprouts: arugula, broccoli greens, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, carrot, celery greens, dill, fennel, flax greens, garlic, kale, leek, lettuce, mustard greens, onion, radish is super good for that kind of spice. Tatsoi, and turnip greens. And there's some really great websites that are specifically for like sprouts, but you can try things that you can buy at the store too. Some are going to be easier for others, like definitely from these are going to be easier to find in the stores. And then finally some grain sprouts. So grain sprout quickly, sometimes taking as little as 20 minutes. So you can play around like with soaking them for that 8 hours, but they might not even need that much, depending on how soft the grain is. Some grains can be pretty soft. Grains produce a sweeter sprout than most other options, which can make a great addition to cereals and breads, and just some quick varieties: amaranth, buckwheat, corn, millet, oats, rice, and rye. And then last but not least, don't forget to save your seeds, especially if you grow your own seed or like own produce at home. Some are easier than others, but yeah, with pumpkin season, it's like great time to save some pumpkin seeds and whatever you might have growing in your garden. And that was all I have. I'm going to stop my share and see if there's questions. Or if you have a question, you can unmute too.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll allow people to unmute themselves and they can jump in since it's a smaller group. Let me go ahead and do that.
And I can add to I see the question about a good place to buy seeds. I can add a resource in my presentation. I'll do it once we log off. But I'll go ahead and share the link to my presentation in the chat. Okay. And then, like I said, I'll add a link to some stores that I know of online.
Okay. So if you have a question, you can chime in.
Yeah. Hey, Crystal?
So this year my experiment was sweet potatoes, which are beautiful. And I learned I learned in time to eat some, but not as many as I could have. The greens are really good. They're really delicious. And I'm told they're more nutritious than spinach. They had a real nice sweet taste, so they weren't, you could use them in salads, but I stir fried them like in my omelet. But when I went to harvest them, I had lots of vines, and I'm thinking that trimming the vines and eating them quicker this year will be better. But I ended up with about 3 potatoes.
Okay.
Do you have some suggestions on improving besides trimming back the vines and eating them so there's less foliage? Are there some other things like fertilizers that I can do that might increase my crop?
Your crop. Did you do that method of cutting the potato up so you get the different eyes?
Yep. Yeah, I probably planted about 8 to 12 things in a 1 foot by 3 foot container.
Uh-huh.
And like I said, I had vines everywhere.
Yeah. But you only got 3 potatoes out of those 8 plants?
Yep.
My only thought, and I'm not 100% sure, but my guess is like maybe they didn't have enough space. But
Okay.
yeah, that would be my only guess, but I'm not sure.
Because what I did is after I harvested them, I turned the soil over because I had been in a container and I added some straw. And I'm going to try to replant them in and add some more soil to that. I'll be back and I will bring back, I'm curing my potatoes right now.
Oh, okay. I haven't tried sweet potato greens, so I'll have to do that. I didn't know that. So somebody messaged me privately, how important is the quality of the water to use to rinse sprout seeds? I would say know your tap water. I guess, unfortunately in LA, there's not that great. We don't have the greatest tap water for sure. I would use filter over just general tap. But the main thing that I've realized sprouting seeds is that the importance really lies in like having clean materials, clean hands, and making sure that they're dry. Not skipping that step, because creating an environment with like the water and in that case the lack of oxygen is just going to be what's really going to promote the funky bacterial growth. So you don't want. Anybody else have questions? When is it time to put your regrowth leafy okay. So I haven't played around that much with, like, I know celery, you can put it in the ground. I'm curious, I haven't played that much around with putting lettuce in the soil after growing it in water. I would recommend to just have a pretty healthy looking start going on, like at least an inch or two. And then depending on the season. So of course we live in an age where we can get these vegetables all year round, but it's not their seasonal, and maybe just thinking about the seasonality of it. So of course, celery and lettuce, beets, any of the roots are gonna do better in this cooler weather. So, cool weather is for our leafy crops and our roots, and then the summer and the spring is a lot of times for the fruits. So just being mindful of that. So if the weather is not the right time for a lettuce, it doesn't like hot weather, maybe just keeping it indoors on a windowsill, I would say. But you can try. Celery, I've definitely seen a lot of times people put in the soil. Okay, I'm just like looking at how much root should your celery have before planting out? So I think in my presentation, I think there's one that had, the one that had the little avocado thing going on with the toothpicks. I, again, would try to have at least like an inch or so. And again, it's like, you're just trying to like get more life out of a plant that really wasn't, grown to like have this extended life. So I would try to have some, and then because you don't want to bury it too deep. You don't want to start to bury the stem because that's just going to rot. So at least enough, like 2 inches of root, and see how it goes, and then put it in the soil. And again, it's going to like cooler weather. I just want to make sure I'm not. can you harvest the leafy veggies indoors in water? Absolutely. So that's a so this is Ashley's question. Can you harvest the leafy veggies indoors in water? I think that's like a big reason why people do this, is that maybe they don't have a yard, or, you know, whatever reason. There's so many different reasons to grow veggies from scraps. But for example, I have some beets right now that I'm just growing. So they're roots. So you're just getting it for the leafy greens. And they're just sitting on my countertop, which does not get a lot of sunlight at all. I live in a loft, and so it's upstairs and not near a window, but it's doing okay. They probably would like a little bit more sunlight than I'm providing, but definitely indoors is great. It's like what this is, a lot of it's all about. It's just giving people an option to grow indoors. So I've got 3 lettuces right now with a few inches, oh great, of roots. Can I read? Yeah, so that's really awesome. So I have Lexine, I have a question. So did they grow in the water? So they did grow the roots in the water, right? I'm not sure if you're able to unmute. And they,
Yep, yeah. They grew. Oh, they grew with the roots in the water. So I cut them off with like about this much left. I can actually grab them.
oh, I would love that. I'm sorry I don't have my setup with some of my stuff. I'm on the move today.
Here's a couple of them.
Wow.
And I have like little cups, and I've been kind of floating them, but I think at this point, like they're really ready to go into a pot. I'm thinking of doing like a little pot on my windowsill for kitchen regrowth stuff. So
Have they a decent amount of sunlight? They look so good.
yeah, and like they have quite a bit of roots.
Wow. So was that, what kind of lettuce was that? Did you buy it? Was it sold with the roots or no?
No,
Oh,
it was just, this is just romaine lettuce from Trader Joe's.
Very
And
cool.
I cut it off. I actually didn't think it would root because there was no signs of any rooting at the bottom. But after, I think it took about a week and a half, and it started growing roots, and then they really taken off. So
cool. Like you like doubled your money pretty much.
yeah. And like I find this kind of lettuce, like you can keep cutting at it and it grows back. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna see how much it does. I don't know how much it'll do.
So I'm curious, have you been harvesting around the perimeter, like the leaves from the outside, or do you just cut it from the top?
I've snipped a few leaves from the perimeter just to try them, but mostly I was just waiting for it to get a bit more growth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because some people that grow lettuce will just have it for like a leaf lettuce, and so they'll just harvest the outside leaves, so you constantly have that new growth coming from the inside.
Yeah, that's what I usually do with mine.
That's so good. Was it organic? I'm just curious if it was like organic or not.
Yeah, I think it was organic. It was just the kind, it's like 3 in a pack.
Yeah.
So it was like wrapped in plastic. It seemed so far from a living thing. And then
I'm sorry, there's that I might have to go inside in a second. So and then thank you. So how long can celery continue to grow after regrowing in water, then transplanted in a container? So being that it's a perennial, sorry, is that driving people nuts? I can probably go inside. Let me see if there's anybody else.
Lexine, I've been growing romaine scraps the way you are. And the first round I did, I waited too long to get them into soil. And they went from looking pretty much like what yours look like right now to in about 2 days, they were just a withering mess. The second round I did put them in the soil about the time yours are now, and they are thriving. So they're gonna need dirt.
That's awesome. Yeah, they definitely get more nutrients from the soil, unless you have like a hydroponic system going on. Yeah, with the celery too, kind of a similar question. How How long can celery continue to grow after regrowing in water, then transplanted in a container? So, being that it's a annual plant, you know, the end of its life is just going to come once it seeds. So I'm not quite sure. I know with like certain things like basil, you can deadhead or take off the flowers to continue just encourage the leaves to grow. I'm not sure if it's the same with celery, but the end of its life is just going to be basically when it starts to try to get to flower and to seed, which might be cool. But again, it's like depending on where you're getting your produce, like, do you want to save those seeds? Maybe not, just because it's kind of an unknown factor a lot of times.
I can jump in on that as
Oh,
well.
please.
So I grew celery from an organic, bunch that I had gotten. And when it bolted, I cut it down to the soil and it grew back. So this was in April. And I originally started it last June of 2019. In April, I cut it down to the soil and it grew back some greens, but it stayed stunted because of the, heat and all that. And it started to shoot up last week. So it was kind of, restarted. So I was like, okay, it's ready again. So I cut it down again. I cut it down on, I think, Sunday, and it's already regrowing back again. So I'm hoping that it continues through winter again. So I think, it's fun just experimenting to see what will happen. And I had read somewhere that someone said they were on, year 5 of their celery. So I thought, well, it's a challenge. Let's just see what happens. So from my experience, when once it starts bolting, I cut it down and just kind of kept watering it and it's still going.
That is so cool. So I'm curious if that person with 5 years, if they were also in LA. Yeah, because we definitely have such a marvelous climate for to have these like annual plants to be able to last many seasons. I'm not sure, maybe a celery is a biennial.
Yeah, it stayed at about 6 inches after it grew back in April. And then it just stayed stunted and then I cut it down again.
It's like so cool. It inspires me to try. I don't often, like with things like garlic, potatoes, onions, like I'll put them in the soil, but I haven't tried that much with like the leafy greens and stems. Awesome. So Becky also has like been growing some green onions and put them in the soil and they've been growing like crazy. Yeah, I've also had like green onions do pretty well. They want to grow. Awesome. Well, I'm loving that so many of you have had success already. Yeah, I'm curious, and maybe Danielle can talk to this, like so Sue asked how much root the celery, I don't know if yours rooted before you put it in the soil?
Yeah, I let mine root actually maybe a little longer than I thought I was going to. And the roots were pretty long. They were already maybe like 5 or 6 inches, but I probably could have, put them in the container. I just didn't know where they were going to go. So I actually do have them in a container. I had two. One didn't make it after the first cutting in April, but I had two. So one pulled through and kept going. But yeah, it definitely had some good roots on it when I planted it. Put it in a tall, it's like a 16-inch pot with some fresh soil, and it's been doing really well. And yeah, that it can totally be done in a container in crazy hot weather, which is, you might not think, but it's still going.
Awesome. Any other questions? So I put the presentation in the chat, and I'll look up where I've gotten my seeds for sprouting. So Becky has a question. So if I plan on putting celery and lettuce in the ground, should I root in a deeper container? I'm trying to make sure I understand. Should I root in a deeper container? So are you gonna put it in the ground or in a container? That's my only, versus a shallow dish. Yeah, you definitely want to give the roots space so that they're not confined and they can
they don't really get root bound, I found, if they're in a shallow dish, but just definitely giving them some space to grow. Yeah, and then so maybe a deeper. So we saw in that one they had it in a glass. So maybe even depending, and I like that they put the toothpicks because that allows for the roots to fall and not be kind of compressed up against themselves. Papaya tips. I do know of like one, I used to be on a board of a community garden downtown, and somebody in that garden had grown papaya, I think from seed, but I don't know how. So I imagine, those seeds are kind of slippery. So there's probably a process to saving those seeds. So I'm not sure any tips, unfortunately, I'm sorry. With celery, it probably doesn't need that much space. I'm sorry, I forgot like how much, I think she said, Danielle mentioned the size that she put it in. It doesn't get that big though. If you think about the celery that we buy, it's like only, I don't know, 4 inches across, depending, so it doesn't need that much space. So 1 gallon, I think, would be fine for celery personally. Cool.
So I have a rosemary bush and I've had people ask about me propagating it. It's a big, when I'm choosing bits off the plant to propagate, and I do have some of that rooting compound. Is there any suggestion to which one, how to choose?
Well, always from a healthy plant.
Well, it's very healthy.
Yeah.
She's a very strong plant.
Oh, that's good.
She's crazy.
I've been looking, so I have so much rosemary. I actually haven't propagated from cuttings, and I haven't done that much research. Somebody else on this call might know, but I was kind of thinking personally, and I've been wanting to research this more just because I do like to try to propagate because it's great practice. I was wondering, since it's such a woody stem, you might have to score that, not score it, but you might have to get rid of some of the wood. I'm not positive.
Sometimes there are pieces that aren't as woody, and that's why I'm wondering if I should grab from those rather than new growth.
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. No, and I appreciate not knowing. That's a perfectly acceptable answer, and I'll have to go look. I have a native front yard, and I've done from seed and from plants, and I'm other than mugwort, I haven't tried to propagate anything, and that's this year. That's why I bought my rooting compound. So
mugwort does so well, though.
Oh, she's easy. She does it on her own. So, but I've got about 6 of them in a pot right now because I have people who want them.
Yeah, I love that plant. Living lettuce, like that butter lettuce Sue mentioned, it does really well because it already has that root going. And then Lexine, okay, so Lexine is responding to so it has been on my mind with that rosemary. Like I've been wanting to research it more, but other things have come up. And then I love that Deborah mentioned about saving seeds because we don't know the source of the mother plant. But I have a ton of pumpkins that I grew, so it's like I'll save some of those seeds this year. And that's the beauty of if you're a member of SLOLA, like growing your own plant food, you know where it came from, you know the source, and then you're able to save the seeds. Okay, thank you, Judy. I'm gonna have to look that up today. Some videos on rosemary rooting. Awesome. Any last questions? If it's okay if I can ask that question about like checking out seeds right now in this time, if that's what you're doing to kind of facilitate that.
Oh, as the library?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure, I can jump in. Before I move on to that, I just wanted to say, going back to Crystal's question about sweet potatoes, one other thing, I've grown them a few times and that I've learned is that if the vines are allowed to spread out on the ground, where they're touching the soil, they will send down new roots and try to grow additional clusters of sweet potatoes, which can then slow down all the sweet potato production in the plant. So if you constantly are kind of lifting them up, and then you get a bigger bunch at the original kind of place. I did one this year where I let a second one go down and just in a separate pot because they were in pots, and I let it go down in another pot. And I had 2 decent clusters, but yeah.
Then, do you harvest the greens at all?
I didn't. I didn't actually know I could until today. So
No, I was so excited. It was about halfway through the summer, and then as soon as I started clipping them off, the bugs attacked them, and I was like, "Oh wow, we're all eating them." But real quick, these are my 2 potatoes. They're not very big, but I grow them myself. And hopefully you'll enjoy. I found that the leaves they had a little more texture than spinach. They were delicious. They aren't bitter like kale. They're not tough like kale. They just have a little more bite than the spinach. So, and I've kind of used the vines to cut them up in the dirt for where I'll grow them again next year. So, or this fall. I think that you can grow them year round in our climate. So have you found that, Jessica, or did you just start them early in the spring?
I started them early in the spring because they are definitely a warm season.
Okay.
Unlike the other potatoes, like like yellow potatoes and white potatoes, those are a cool season, but
right.
Potatoes are warm.
So I also, some of the ones that look like they were trying to be potatoes and weren't, I threw them all in a paper bag, and we'll see if they sprout out, and I can use those. So thank you everyone for your feedback on both the potatoes and the rosemary.
Great. And now I'll get into the nitty gritty of the library seed checkout. First, I want to just again give a shout out to the Altadena Library. They have been partners with us since the beginning, and they used to host our meetings and our seed catalog, our seed stores until COVID, and now we are, of course, remote. And starting back in April, we gathered the seeds from the library and brought them to my home, and have been doing a seed checkout remotely. So you do have to be a member to check out seeds, and we send out an email once a month because we do it monthly. And there's usually like a small, like maybe 5 or 6 days window time to get your seed order in. We have a digital checkout. It's like a Google form. And then I get those, and Deborah and myself kind of tag team the work and get the seeds out via the mail. And that's how we've been managing the seed checkout since April. You do have to become a member, you do need to be in the LA area. So that we do that's one limitation if you're here from somewhere outside of the LA area. Mostly because, part of our mission is to grow seeds and create a library of seeds that have seeds that are adapted to our growing environments here in the Los Angeles basin and valleys. So yeah, so that's kind of the nitty gritty. Danielle, could you put the link, if you have it, to the membership, because our membership forms are also now digital as well. And if people are local and would like to sign up, you can fill out the form digitally, or you can just email us at Slola Altadena. If someone could put it there, all of it's in the chat, our Instagram, our email, our new member form, and where to send the $10 membership payment.
So if I'm a member of the Venice branch, like I can be both, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So members have access to either library because our database is shared. So they would have your member number and all of that. The only caveat I will say is that if you've signed up at Venice, you're not going to automatically get email notifications from the Altadena branch. And you would need to, contact us to let us know that you're interested in getting our emails as well as Venice's.
Or I could always just make a second, like the donation, and then
yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
That would work too. Are there any other questions about membership or how the library works? Okay. Am I forgetting anything that I need to say?
Sue was asking about seed check-in.
Oh yeah. So we do, we are working on how seed check-in is going to work in this remote world. And we are also really as a library, like trying to build our resources for our members about seed saving and return. So it's something that we're still figuring out how to get seeds back because we're not seeing people, in person. But please be on the lookout because we are putting some energy into that because it's important for our library to grow. And we really, really want to encourage people to return seeds and not to be afraid to try seed saving or, and to email us if you have specific questions. So yeah, so we will please be looking out for that as well. And we do offer seed saving workshops at our monthly meetings at about twice a year.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to send an email to the email that's posted there, slolaaltadena@gmail.com, if you want to sign up for our newsletter. We do try to put all the information in the newsletter, so membership form information. We do follow-ups after we have these meetings, so we'll try to send out any resources that we can and give you a heads up on the upcoming meetings. So you'll definitely get a link to the Zoom meeting beforehand so that you can register and get a reminder that it's coming. So all of that we try to keep within that email newsletter.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you, Bree, for coming and sharing your experience and expertise. And thanks everybody else for coming and participating and asking great questions.
Just one last thing, our YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, we have a YouTube channel.
How do people find our YouTube channel? I get this question all the time.
We should have that in our block of links. That's a new addition. So I think if you Googled Slola Altadena YouTube, it would come up. But I don't have the link handy. So maybe we'll start putting it in we should start putting it in our newsletter as well. It's very new. I think it has like 4 videos on it. So.
Yeah, I think we do put the link in the newsletter, but I'll add it to this group of links for the meeting. But yeah, if you search Slola Altadena on YouTube, you should find it pop up right away.
Yeah. Yep. All right, everybody, have a great Saturday. Enjoy this wet, cool weather if you're here with us in Southern California. And we'll see you next month. Bye.